It's time to end the whisper. So many suffer in silence. I might not save them all, no, but I'ma die trying. It's time to end the whisper. Never thought in my life it would happen to me, but it did. And now I'm the voice for recovery.
Welcome to Real Talk about addiction and recovery, eliminating the whisper. I'm your host, Scott Cochran, along with Jeff Breedlove.
Coach, it's great to be here with you for another episode of this exciting podcast. As AARA, the American Addiction Recovery Association, goes across America in person and virtually and on podcasts to bring families and survivors together as we address the addiction epidemic from all aspects, from personal stories all the way up to policy in Washington, D.C. and everything in between. And, I know, Coach, you're such an icon in sports. And I know our guest today is familiar with the sports world too. Like the two of you, I have been on the sideline of a high school football team as a glorified assistant for a special team at a small high school, but I'm nowhere near y'all's level. But sports play such an important part of the American culture, and sports plays such an important part of the addiction epidemic. And I know the story that we're going to hear today and the conversation that you're going to lead, Coach, with our guest is going to make a difference in the lives of millions of people across America. So, Coach, thanks for getting this organized for us.
I am so fired up about this guest, too. So we have Britt Reid on with us today. Welcome to the party, Britt.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it, man. I'm stoked to be here.
We're going to get into Britt's story today. The awesomeness of recovery is being able to be vulnerable, to be free, to let go of all the baggage is such a beautiful thing. And I'm going to tell my story about what motivates me and why I'm so glad Britt's on here with us today. There were times in my recovery. There were times when I was struggling. There were times when I was going through it. My brain went directly to Britt, and I knew that no matter what I was going through, that he was going through something a lot more difficult. A lot more difficult than I was, and it gave me strength. So thank you for that. You didn't even know you were doing it. So thank you. And I can't tell you how cool, because I've known you now for, I don't know what, 4 years?
About 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. 4 years. I guess we're not supposed to say how we know each other. We're just coaches, right? Just through coaching.
That's right.
A different kind of coaching.
That's right.
So, I'm going to hand it off to you, and I want to let you know that we will ask some questions, but, I want you to take this where you would take it if you were in an AA meeting telling your story, is where I'd love to take this, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely, man. First and foremost, again, I just want to thank you guys for having me on here, and, you guys are doing amazing things. I admire what you guys have put together, and the people that you're trying to help. And recovery has a special place in my heart. It's been devastating to myself and my family, and not enough people want to talk about it. So that eliminate the whisper is huge, man. The stigma around addiction and recovery is just, we need to get rid of it. And so you guys on the forefront, on the front lines, attacking this thing head on. I love it, and you identified a problem, and you have a solution. And that's the greatest thing about what you guys are doing in my mind. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I grew up in a very close-knit family. My parents were there, both my parents in my life. My dad, for those that don't know, is a football coach, and currently the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. I grew up around football, right? I was around these locker rooms, and just that was my life. And played football from a young age all the way up into college, and just a very tight-knit religious family. Great upbringing. And so for me, like, addiction touches all walks of life, right? You don't have to be from a certain walk of life for addiction to affect you. It has, it doesn't discriminate whatsoever. And that was true in my case. My story started when I was about 14 years old. I had a knee injury and I had knee surgery, and they prescribed me 40 milligram Oxycontin after the surgery. And little did I know, but that it took me, man. It got me quick. And so here I am at 14, and I ran through all that stuff, and I was living in Philadelphia at the time, which is the heroin capital of the United States. And so it was very readily available, especially back then in the early 2000s. And so when I ran out of my prescription, I went through withdrawal for the first time at 14, and I didn't like it. And I found that I could find Vicodin, Percocet, Oxycontin through people at school. And so I started taking those, and I really became a daily user. And by the time I was almost 16 years old, I'm driving down to North Philadelphia buying these little white pills, man. And it consumed my life.
I can only imagine a ginger, a redhead like yourself and me drive. Wow.
It was crazy. And the position that I was in, with my dad being the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles and having that last name, the Philadelphia Eagles are, if you're associated with that team in Philadelphia, you're like a god. I was going down, buying these drugs from these people. I was 15 years old, getting into nightclubs, drinking. I started doing cocaine. For a 16-year-old to be able to do that is unheard of. But that's how it was. I was hanging out with these very prominent people, in Philadelphia, and just living the fast life. And this whole time, I was living such a double life, because I was still getting really good grades in school. I was captain of my football team from my sophomore year, junior year, senior year. And no one really knew what was going on. No one knew what was happening on the weekends, down in Center City, Philadelphia. No one knew what was happening behind closed doors at my parents' house. No one knew that I was waking up every morning, taking a handful of Vicodin just to get out of bed. And this progressed, right? And it led to, again, I was doing cocaine and painkillers and drinking every once in a while. And so this progressed all the way through until I went to college. So I was a walk-on at Arizona State, and I knew that once I got there, I was going to get drug tested. And so I went through withdrawal before I left for college. Wow. And I thought, I can do this. I can make it without this stuff. And I did for a little bit. It kept getting worse, right? And what a part that I missed is, before I hurt my knee, my freshman year in high school, I fractured my L4 vertebrae. And, I had some stuff with that, but nothing too serious. But when I got to college, because of that injury, that lower back was kind of already weakened. And I was doing well at my freshman year in college, and then I got hurt during practice in hitting drills. And because that L4 was already fractured, I hit this running back during tackling drills, and just the angle of it crushed my L5 vertebrae. Literally from that time on, I could take my MRI of my back to any doctor and get painkillers, right? And so I got back on the painkillers, and I ended up having a couple back surgeries. I couldn't play football anymore. I wasn't going to classes. I didn't have anyone checking on me. I'm at the number one party school in the country, and it snowballed real quick, man, real quick. And I was looking at my third back surgery, and I moved back to Philadelphia. I would take 1,000 milligrams of Vicodin every morning. I would take 10 milligram Vicodin in the morning just to get out of bed. It was terrible. But one of the parts I kind of left out there was when I was a junior in high school, my older brother, who plays a huge part in my story, he was one of the straightest kids I knew. Never drank, never smoked, nothing. And Memorial Day weekend of his senior year, he was 2 years older than me. I convinced him to smoke a joint and drink a beer with me. That kind of snowballed into its own deal. Then he went to college, came back that next summer. I introduced him to painkillers, and they grabbed him faster than they grabbed me. And so he very quickly figured out that Oxycontin was way too expensive. And so he went to heroin. We always had talked like, hey, we'll dabble in this stuff, but we're never gonna shoot it, right? We're never gonna inject ourselves. Very shortly after that, he went to his first rehab, got out of his first rehab, relapsed, and I remember catching him in his room with a needle in his arm, and he had started shooting heroin, right? And so, I go off to college, I get hurt, my addiction takes over all over again. He was in like his third or fourth rehab out in California, and he gets out of there. He was in sober living there for a little bit, and then he moved to Tempe to live with me. And he had been living with me for probably a month when I found a baggie full of needles and spoon and all the stuff to shoot heroin. And so that kind of crushed me. I thought he was going to be doing better, and I was still, obviously I wasn't doing well, but that really snowballed into its own thing, and we started doing heroin together. Again, I never shot it, but that's when I started getting into heroin. And so I was looking at my third back surgery, and I moved back to Philadelphia, and about 2 months later, he moved back to Philadelphia. I ended up not having the back surgery, but things just kept getting worse. Now we're in the heroin capital of the United States. There is so much heroin at every street corner. And here's two white kids going to North Philadelphia, popping bundles of heroin in one of the worst neighborhoods in America. It just kept getting worse and worse. And we both looked awful. And there was really no hiding it. I thought I was fooling everybody, but I really wasn't. They might not have had the hard evidence. They might not have been able to actually catch me. I'm talking my parents or siblings, or they knew what was going on. And so that led to, I was taking some classes. I had transferred from Arizona State, and I was taking some classes at a community college, getting ready to transfer to Temple University. And I was on my way to class one day, higher than a kite, and I got in a little road rage incident. And I'm 20 years old at the time. And I had a bunch of guns in my car because after class, I was going to go to the shooting range. I got into an altercation at a stoplight, and one thing led to another, and I ended up pulling a gun on a guy. I'm in class. I get this call. It's a detective. And he said, "Hey, listen, we know you were in some type of incident this morning, and we'd like to talk to you about it." And so I told him, I said, "Look, I'm in class right now. Can I come by the precinct after I'm done?" And he was like, "Yeah, here's the address. Stop by when you're done class." Well, I knew I had all these guns in my car, and I thought I was going to be, smarter than everybody. And so I packed these guns up. I traded cars with my brother. My brother was taking classes at the same community college. I traded cars with him. I took his car, loaded all the firearms in, and snuck back to my house because I figured they were looking for my car. Put the guns at my house, went back to school, and we swapped cars again. And little did I know that while I was gone dropping those guns off, my brother was in the car getting high. And so he left school before me. I was just right behind him. And I kind of hit this traffic. And as I get up to the stoplight, I see in the intersection, my brother's car is just mangled. And there's another car that's been hit, T-boned, right on the side. There's cops everywhere. So I pull up and I get out, and, I find out that my brother had nodded off, ran a red light, and T-boned this lady. And so here we are the exact same day, right? The cops come up. They're like, "What are you doing? Who are you?" I tell them who I am. They said, "Oh, really? They're looking for you." So I get handcuffed at the scene of my brother's accident. I had accidentally left ammo box in my brother's car. So they see this ammo box in the car. They end up searching his car, and they find all these drugs. So now he gets arrested. And here we are in Philadelphia. Our dad's a head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. It was right after the season. Him and my mom weren't even in town. They had taken a little vacation, and now they're getting phone calls. "Hey, both of your sons just got arrested," right? Mm-hmm. Same day, two separate instances, couple hours apart. And it was ugly, man. It was really ugly. We had helicopters above our house for about a week. I remember getting processed through the jail, and they released me. I get in my attorney's car and we're driving up to my parents' house, and you can't even get to the driveway. There's so many media vans, and we lived in this cul-de-sac. The whole cul-de-sac was full of media. And so, we make our way through there, and here we are, me and my brother sitting there, basically life in shambles. We're both severely addicted to opiates, and we have just, put my parents and my other siblings in this awful turmoil of our life. Right. We kind of go through that process.
What year is this?
This was 2008.
I was wondering.
It was actually 2007 because
Okay.
I got out of jail in 2008. So
Gotcha.
it was like January of 2007.
Gotcha.
We're going through the process. We got these attorneys and we're trying to figure out what's going on. I'm looking at felony gun charges and he's looking at a DUI. And here's this guy that's never been in trouble before. And I got all this guilt and shame because I feel like I just created this monster and I'm bringing him down with me, And at the time, I never really thought that it would ever get that bad. I mean, no one does, right? It's not like you wake up one morning and say, you know what? I want to be a drug addict, and that's what I'm going to do with my life. But I definitely didn't want that for me, but I especially didn't want that for my brother. That dynamic between me and him, we're 2 years apart, and we moved a lot growing up, right? I mean, I lived in 6 states by the time I was 14 years old.
Coach's son. A coach's
son, man.
Yeah.
There's 5 kids, and every kid is born in a different state, and we're all about 2 years apart. So again, we moved a lot, but it was all the moving was easier because I had my best friend, so it didn't really matter where I went. I always had my best friend. And so we were very, very tight. So here we are. And he's looking at maximum 3 days in jail for a first offense DUI, 72 hours. And we had all these stipulations on us, our bond stipulations. And so we had to report to basically a probation officer. We had to have random drug testing. I wasn't allowed to drive other than from class back home. And so I was out on bond for a few months at this point. And on my way back from class, I stopped in at this Dick's Sporting Goods. And, I was kind of rummaging around and looking for stuff. And one of the employees recognized me and kind of asking me for some stuff. And, I was not the politest person. And so, I said something to them that I probably shouldn't have said and told them basically leave me alone. And so they ended up calling the police on me. So I come out of the Dick's Sporting Goods and get in my truck, start driving off, and there's like 10 cop cars surrounding me. And they end up arresting me. I had been on all these other prescription drugs. I went down because of the arrest. Me and my brother both went down to Florida to get detoxed and get clean. And through that process, they had put me on a bunch of, it was some new age detox. Like, they were trying to balance out our chemical makeup and all this stuff. And they put us on so many prescriptions. Well, I wasn't taking all the prescriptions, and I had baggies that my parents would give me every morning. They wouldn't let me hold the prescriptions. My parents were giving them to me every day, and I was cheeking them and saving these things because I didn't want to take everything. And so when they arrested me, they searched my car and they found, I don't even remember the exact number, but it was hundreds of pills, a bunch of Adderall, Valium, all this stuff. And so there I am again. I get arrested, right? And I'm out on bond. So I'm like, oh, great. This, I'm definitely going to jail now. And lo and behold, the judge revoked my bond, threw my hiney in jail. And there I sat, and while I'm in there, my brother was still out, and he ends up relapsing and failed a drug test. It came back as diluted, so they lock him up. And I had already been in for a couple months by the time this happened. He comes into the jail. They test him again. He passes somehow. They release him. Well, he was dirty the whole time. He went and took another drug test with the parole officer, and he knew this one was coming up dirty. When they called him back into the office, he knew he was going back to jail. and he had a rough time the first couple of days he was in going through detox. And so he decided he was going to smuggle some pills into the prison. So he gets it off, man, what they call boofed, a whole lot of pills. He shoved them up his butt and got him into the prison or into the jail. And they take us out. You know, he was in there for a couple months, probably about a month. And at this point, he's done, right? All he just needs to go to sentencing, and he's getting time served. Me, on the other hand, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I was looking at 7 to 14 years for an illegal firearm, brandishing a firearm, terroristic threats, aggravated assault. I had a litany of charges, and then they hit me with a DWI on top of, from the Dick's Sporting Good incident. So we have sentencing on the same day. They take us to court. We're down in the holding cell. And we're one of the last people to go. We were in there all day. I remember sitting in there, and it was just like, God, it's uncomfortable in those holding cells now. All cement, and it's just awful. But they finally come down and they get my brother. And I guess as they were taking him up, the bailiff goes up to the judge and says, hey, the jail just called and they found 89 pills in Garrett Reid's cell. Well, the judge is pissed, right? And he let it be known. And later on, I end up becoming pretty good friends with this judge. But at the time, I hated this guy, But right there, because of that, because he was out of the jail when they found the pills, they had to charge him with introducing contraband to a correctional facility, which is an automatic 2 years in the state penitentiary. So here's this kid again. I'm feeling like crap. I introduced this guy to this lifestyle, and it's destroying his life, right? And it's destroying mine at the same time. And so,
how old are you during this time?
I was 21.
Yeah, and so he was 23.
Yep. And so, the judge comes out, he rips my brother, he rips my family. And, all this is headlines, national headlines. And so then I come up after my brother, and I was a little pissed at him. I'm like, dude, you screwed me. Like, now the judge is pissed. He's gonna wax me. Like, man. But the judge, pushed my stuff back a little bit. And I ended up getting 8 months to 23.5 months in the county jail. And my sentencing judge had also started a drug court in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And so I wasn't qualified for this drug court because I had a felony charge, and it was considered a violent felony. And so I really wasn't eligible, but because he was in charge of it, he was my sentencing judge, he made an exception, and he thought that I could really benefit. He saw through all the other crap, and he knew, hey, this kid's an addict, man, and he needs some help. There was nothing he could do for my brother. My brother he got 2 years, he went upstate. But he allowed me to get into this drug court. And if you complete the drug court, they're supposed to drop your charges. Again, my situation was a little unique. They weren't going to be able to drop my charges. I was still going to have that felony, but it got me out of prison, or out of jail. I keep saying prison. It got me out of the county jail 2 months early, and it was a 15-month long program. And jail has a funny way of making you look within yourself. There's nothing but cement walls and metal bunk beds, and you got all these crazy people around you. Some of them good people, some of them not, but it's just, you have a lot of time to sit there and think. And, I was like, I'm sick of this life, man. I need to do something. And so when he allowed me to get into that drug court, I was like, you know what, I'm going to attack this thing head on. And I'm going to try to get whatever I can out of it. And I'm going to try to change things. And that's exactly what I did. And I was one of the first people to ever go through the program, 15 months straight, no setbacks, no missed drug tests, no missed classes, nothing. And my judge, he was impressed, and I think he could see a change. And so he ended up, he couldn't drop my charges, but instead of having 5 years of probation, he dropped it down to 1 year of probation, unsupervised, and said, "Hey, man, just keep doing what you're doing," and it was awesome. And so I did that 1 year of probation. Again, went straight through it. And when I got done that, he actually my judge reached out and he asked me. He said, "Hey, there's this National Drug Court Convention in D.C. Would you be interested in sharing your story there?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And so I went down to this National Drug Court, and it was at this drug court that I met this guy who ended up later down the road becoming instrumental in my life and really helping me to get to where I'm at now. But he's an interventionist. His name's Scott. I won't mention any last names. I don't think I'm supposed to, but so I met this guy, Scott, right? And
it's not me, but I know who it is.
Yeah, you know who it is. And I had no idea at the time that this guy, again, would play such an instrumental part in my life. So I spoke at this drug court. I met this guy, Scott, and I was doing really well, man. And I ended up, I went back to that community college. I got my associates, transferred to Temple University, walked into Al Golden's office. And I said, "Hey, I'm a student here. I'm trying to finish my degree, and I can't play football anymore, but I would love to still be involved. Do you have anything?" And he was fired up, man. He was like, "Absolutely." And here I was scared to death. I'm a convicted felon. I was all over the news, and I didn't think anyone would give me a chance. But Al Golden gave me a chance, and he allowed me to come into his program as a student assistant, and just threw me right in there. He said, "Go, do your thing." And so I was basically a glorified GA. And I was taking classes and working with the football team, breaking down film, running scout teams, and met some great people in this process. And he ends up leaving after a year, and Steve Adazio came in. And so I repeated that same process. I went in and said, "Hey, Coach Adazio, I know I got a past and it's not great, but I've been helping out with the program the last year, and I would love it if I could continue in that role." And again, two great human beings that, I love to this day, and I owe them so much. But he said, "Absolutely, we'd love to have you." And so after that first year with Steve, I finished up my degree, entered the graduate program. He made me a graduate assistant. And so I worked for Steve Adazio for 2 years. And just that whole time, I was slowly trying to rebuild my reputation and just doing the next right thing. And, I was doing pretty good. And then I relapsed. And I remember I went golfing one day with some friends, and, I was still having issues with my back, and it hurt all the time. And we were about to tee off on the first hole. And I was telling my buddy how my back was hurt. And he said, "Well, I got something if you want it." And I was like, "Yeah, it won't hurt." And he gave me a Percocet. And I remember breaking it in half. I was like, a half won't kill me. I took that half. And dude, I was off to the races all over again, man. All that time I had put together just vanished like that. And, you hear in meetings all the time that when you're clean and you're sober, your addiction's still in the corner doing push-ups,
That's right.
And it's getting stronger. And it picked up not where it left off, but way more advanced. I got hooked on this stuff. And my brother had just gotten released, and he had gone through the state penitentiary. They put him in a state rehab. He relapsed in that first rehab. They had him in Kensington, and if you know anything about Kensington, Philadelphia, I mean, they got a park there called Needle Park.
You know, Brett, I've been twice. Once with Coach, once without Coach. Want to give a shout out to Savage Sisters, who do such great work there, and it was a privilege to see the situation there and see brothers and sisters in Kensington.
You see a lot of walking zombies down there, but there are some amazing people trying to do their best to help out down there. And definitely hats off to them. But it was funny that here, I mean, heroin at the time, fentanyl just started to come around, but he's in a rehab. I remember going to this rehab with my parents and my siblings, and I remember pulling up to it the first time we could visit him. And we get out of the car, and we're stepping on used needles right there along the street. But so he ends up relapsing. They send him back to the penitentiary for a little bit. He gets back out. Long story short, he's doing good, right? He gets out. He's doing pretty good. And he started interning with my dad as a strength and conditioning coach for the Eagles. It was kind of right around there when I relapsed. I'm in this thing right now. I'm hiding it really well. I'm a highly functioning addict, man. And I was engaged at the time. And so, just before my wedding, I went out to dinner with my brother, and he wasn't right, you know? And so come to find out, he had too relapsed. And so like our stories are intertwined, man. It was like I would screw up, he would screw up, or he would screw up, I would screw up. And he assured me, and I had no room to talk at this point, but I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And you know, he's like, it's nothing, man. It was one time. Don't worry about it. Da, da, da. I tried to believe him, but we go out to California. I get married in July of 2012. And that was the last time I saw my brother alive, was at my wedding. He was my best man and, you know, again, my best friend. And so I go on my honeymoon. I come back, the season starts, and we're in training camp right there in North Philadelphia, Temple. And my brother was with my dad up at Lehigh University. And I remember I was getting ready for practice. And I'm trying to get the practice scripts done, and I'm scrambling. And I heard my phone, but I was too busy. I didn't answer it. And about 5 minutes later, Steve Adazio walks into my office, and he said, I need to talk to you. Come with me. And he had my little brother. Little brother was a running back at Temple University. So I was coaching my little brother there. And Steve had my brother with him. And he walks us down the hall into his office. He hands me the phone. And then walks out and closes the door. And I get on the phone, and it's my dad. And he said, hey, Garrett OD'd last night. And it took a minute to register. And my first response was like, okay, where is he? Like, what hospital is he at? Is he okay? And he said, no, Britt, he OD'd and died. And I remember I kind of collapsed, you know? And my little brother grabs the phone, and he's on the phone with my dad, and I kind of get myself together. And he said, if you guys want to come up and see him, I'll have him keep him here until you get here. And so we jumped in the car, and we drove up to Lehigh University. And my brother's dorm room was right across the hall from my dad's. And I walk in there, there's police cars everywhere. And I remember walking in, and he's a big dude, man. He's 6'5", 300 pounds. And they had him laid out on this couch. And he looked like he was sleeping, you know? And I remember walking up to him, and I grabbed his arm, and I looked at his veins, and I could only see one little poke mark. And that's all it took, man. You know, he thought he could do what he used to do, and he took a shot. And at first I thought it was cut with fentanyl, but when the toxicology report came back, it was basically pure heroin. And it was that one shot, man, and it killed him. And I remember leaving that dorm room. And this is how strong addiction is here. I just was holding my brother who just OD'd on heroin. And I left and used the same drug that just killed my brother. And it was, looking back on it, it really is a testament to this disease and to this epidemic that we have going on in our country, that I could lose my best friend, my partner in crime, and leave, and still, it didn't even come into my mind like, hey, you're gonna die too, and use the same exact drug. And so, but that's what I did, and so we bury him, and we kind of just keep pushing through, man, and after the season, my dad got fired as the head coach in Philadelphia, and I made a decision to get clean. And so here I am, newly married. My new wife is watching. I told her I had the flu, and I was sicker than a dog, man, on my living room floor, just basically vomiting out of both ends, shivering. And I remember she came home from work, and it was like the third or fourth day. And she's like, the flu doesn't last this long. Like, what's going on? And I told her, I said, I relapsed a while back, and I'm going through withdrawal right now from opiates. And she was very supportive. I give her credit, man. She hung with me and was like, hey, we'll get through this. And I detoxed. And I remember I was at the end of my detox, and I get a call from my dad, and he says, hey, I want to hire you with the Chiefs. I was like, absolutely. And so I flew out to Kansas City. Still wasn't feeling 100%, but feeling better. And I accepted this job. And, I thought, this is what I need. I need to get out of Philadelphia. I need to get away from all these people. And this will be the change that I need. And it was. I mean, again, just put my mind to it and started to go through that process. And I had been introduced to Narcotics Anonymous when I got out of jail in 2008. And when I left Philadelphia, or when I relapsed, I stopped going. But the stuff that I learned there was always with me, right? And it's funny how when you have that knowledge and you start to screw up, how much worse you feel. Yes. Because it's like, what to do, man. Where the help is. There are people out there that are willing to do whatever it takes to help you out. And I didn't use that. And I remember my very first sponsor told me something. He said, you're headed for a relapse when you see yourself start working the steps backwards, right? You stop being of service, and you slowly progress all the way back to where you take your will back. And over those years in Kansas City, I did great, right? But I was not connected to the program. I got too consumed. I had kids, I had a family now, and I got too consumed in everything that I really wasn't taking care of myself. And it was only a matter of time, where I was eventually going to pick something up. I remember, the stress. I was highly stressed with the job. I was the assistant D-line coach in Kansas City for my first 3 years. And then the D-line coach retired, and I became the head D-line coach. And that little voice in my brain that for my whole life always told me I wasn't good enough was severely affecting me at that point. I made it through my first year good. And then I started dabbling again. And the way I was justifying it was, I'm not doing opiates, right? I was doing Suboxone. And hey, they use Suboxone to get people off of drugs. This isn't bad. It helped me deal with all the anxiety, the stress, all that stuff. I knew it wasn't right. deep down in, I knew I wasn't right. I know what my mind was telling me to use it, but my heart knew that what I was doing was not right. And so I was taking these Suboxone my last 2 years as a D-line coach, and my wife ended up finding out. I remember we were in the AFC Championship game versus New England Patriots. We should have gone to the Super Bowl that game, right? But we had a D lineman offsides when we had an interception. So the interception got annulled. The Patriots get back, they go down, score, take it to overtime, and then they win the game. So after that game, and I kind of knew this was coming, but because my wife had found, the Suboxone, I knew that something was coming down the pike. And I go in Monday, and the defense coordinator gets fired. And I remember my dad calling me into the office, and he said, "Look, you need to find a job," and the whole defense staff got fired. And I go home that night, and I was sitting in my driveway, and I remember I started crying, like, how am I going to walk in here and tell my wife and kids that I just got fired, and not just fired, I just got fired by my own dad,
Right.
And so I remember I took some Suboxone, a big old chunk of Suboxone, let that kick in, and I walked in. And when I walked in, my wife said, "We need to talk." And I said, "This can't get any worse." And she said, "You need to go to rehab. And if you don't go to rehab, me and the kids are leaving." And I pitched a fit, man. I was pissed. And again, I was pissed at myself, but you never take it out on yourself. Outwardly, I'm attacking her and telling her she's the bad guy and this and
You
that.
always take it out on the ones you love the most.
Right? I mean, it's brutal.
Yep.
And so that guy that I met at that drug court convention many years back, I remember that number popped up on my phone the next morning. And here's this guy, Scott, and he said, "Hey, dude, we need to get you some help." And I fought it and fought it and fought it. And I finally conceded, and I went to a detox. And the irony of this is I went to this detox in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
And I was there while the Super Bowl was going on, right? I'm in detox while the Super Bowl is being played in Atlanta, and we should have been in that Super Bowl,
That's right. You should have been in it.
But I was addressing something much bigger at that time.
That's right.
And so I went through the detox, and I got out, and I told them I'm not going to rehab. I'm fine. I'm good. I don't need it. I just needed to get this out of my system. I can do this. And they put some things in place. I was meeting with a drug counselor, and he was randomly drug testing me. And they said, you can't do any drugs. You can't, we're taking you off the Adderall. We're taking you off everything. And you're going to do this thing the right way. And by the way, you can't drink. And I was like, I can't. What?
Right.
Like, I don't have a drinking problem. I did good for a while. And then I was pissed because I don't like people telling me what to do, and I was like, I'm going to show them I can drink. Well, I wasn't going to show them really. I was just going to sneak around everyone's back like a drug addict does. And I started drinking. And dude, that alcohol jumped on me faster than any other drug ever. I mean, it took me like that. And I had always really kind of stayed away from alcohol because my dad, growing up, my dad would just beat it into us like, "Hey, dude, you come from a long line of alcoholics." And my dad's the first male on his side of the family not to be an alcoholic. His dad was, his brother was, all of his grandfathers. And so I was always kind of scared of alcohol, but I was going to show everybody. And so I started drinking. And I remember I had it down because I kind of figured out when they would send me to get drug tested. And in the drug test, they also tested for alcohol enzymes. And so I'd go take this drug test, and then I would get in the car. I'd already have the alcohol in the car, and I'd start chugging. And I would drink for a couple of days, and then I'd stop. And I was like, see, I can do this. I'm not an addict. I don't have to do this every day. And that went on like that for a while. It progressively, I kind of made it through that whole drug testing phase without getting caught, and things kind of lessened up on that side. And when that started lessening up, the drinking started more. I made it a while. We go to that Super Bowl in 2019, the season of 2019. We win it. It was 2020 when we won the Super Bowl. I got absolutely obliterated during the parade. So I drank off and on that whole season, the following season.
Remember position coach during this?
Yeah. So I had moved. I kind of left that out. So when I got fired,
right.
Steve Spagnuolo got hired as the defensive coordinator. And I got out of detox. I went back, and he had just got hired. He was in for his interview. And I remember going in and talking to him. And I said, hey, I would love to be your D-line coach. And he was like, yeah, I don't think I want to go a different direction there. And, I'm trying to sell myself. I'm like, dude, we just led the league in sacks. Chris Jones had 15 and a half sacks. The most he was the third most sacks in the NFL. We had 52 and a half sacks. Like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm a great D-line coach. And he's like, no, he said, but I want to keep you on. He said, I think you got some value here. And he ended up making me the linebackers coach, the outside linebackers coach.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I was the outside linebackers coach. And when we won the Super Bowl, and then the following year, we did pretty good that following year. We were going back to the Super Bowl. Part of me going to detox and Steve hiring me as the outside linebackers coach, my dad kept me on a year-to-year deal. Right. So I knew my contract was coming up at the end of the season. And so it's Thursday before we leave for the Super Bowl. And I'm at the office late, and I had a bottle of liquor, and I'm working on some cut-ups, trying to put together a job interview tape for after the Super Bowl. I can go interview. I didn't think I was going to get re-signed with the Chiefs. And so I'm putting that together. I get in my car and I drink some of this liquor, and I get on the highway. As I'm getting on the highway, I'm trying to merge onto the highway, and I'm looking over my shoulder, and there was a car that was stalled it was half on the on-ramp, half on the shoulder. Never even saw it. There was no lights or anything. And I clipped that car.
Police say Britt Reid's phone could help them understand more about Thursday night's crash, when his pickup smashed into two vehicles stopped along an on-ramp to the highway.
The injured party is a 5-year-old female. She's going to be transported to
the collision leaving 5-year-old Ariel Young in intensive care. This heartbreaking photo posted on a GoFundMe site by the little girl's aunt. According to the search warrant, following the crash, Ariel's mother, Felicia, told police she saw Reid talking on his phone. She stated she pled with him to call 911 as her phone was lost. 911 records show a call was made from Reid's phone moments after the collision. According to court documents, when police arrived, Reid said he drank 2 to 3 drinks that night, while officers on the scene noticed a moderate odor of alcohol, and his eyes were bloodshot and red, and that Reid told officers he was on Adderall. The crash, just 3 days before Sunday's Super Bowl, took place a little after 9 p.m. down the road from the Chiefs Stadium. On Monday, the team's head coach, Andy Reid, Britt's father, revealing his son also suffered injuries.
Yeah, my heart goes out to that young lady. I'm also a dad, so I get that. So I have concerns obviously on both sides. And Britt did have surgery. He's doing better now.
It shot me into the car in front of it that had stopped to help them. I mean, I remember trying to steer away from it, but when I clipped that car, it knocked the steering out, and I hit that car going like 60 miles an hour. I remember getting out, my adrenaline was going, and that car was mangled, my car was mangled, and these ladies get out of the car. And the one is crying and screaming, my daughter. And I called 911, and she's in the car trying to get the kid out, and I'm walking up to it, trying to do whatever I can. I didn't really want to get in the way, but I wanted to help. And the fire people come up, and I remember I'm standing there, and the fireman grabs the kid. This little girl is just limp, man. And I remember them sitting the little girl on the tailgate of the truck I was in. The first thought that came to my mind was, dude, for a long time, I didn't think my addiction affected anybody but me. But now I'm looking at this, like, I thought she was dead, this lifeless body. And I could not tell myself that my addiction didn't affect anybody but me anymore, you know? And my higher power knows me pretty well and knew what it would take for that to really register with me. And so there it is. It's right in front of my face, and there was no denying it, man. And this little girl, same age as my daughter, same age. And here I thought I had just killed her, you know. They put her in the ambulance, and they take her off, and they put me in the cop car. They had asked me if I had been drinking, and I told them yes. You know, I had a couple drinks. And so then they're bringing I forget what they call this officer, but to do like a field sobriety test and all that stuff. And the guy gets me out of the car. And as I get out of the car, my side hurt so bad. And I reach down and I go to touch my side, and my side is sticking out like a foot. And so I told him, I was like, hey, I think I need to go to the hospital. So they put me in an ambulance, and I had severed my femoral artery. And so they took me into surgery. I almost killed myself, man. I lost over 1 liter of blood. And luckily the doctor was able to tie it off and get me stitched up. I remember sitting they discharged me the day of the Super Bowl. And I'm walking out of the hospital, and I wanted to go see this little girl. And they were like, absolutely not. You know, you're not allowed to go talk to the family or anything. And so I go home, and I was laid up in bed for about 2 weeks, watched the Super Bowl, watched, you know, the Chiefs lose. And, you know, I felt terrible about that because I was a huge distraction, I'm sure. All the players and coaches having to answer all these questions about the accident 3 days before the Super Bowl. And this whole time I'm sitting there, and people are telling me different things about this little girl, right? And for those 2 weeks, every time my daughter would come in, I couldn't talk to my own daughter. I would see her, and I would just start crying. And, you know, my daughter had some learning delays herself. And I knew that this little girl that I had hurt was in a coma. I heard that she was going to have permanent brain damage, and she wouldn't be able to walk and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, I know how difficult it is for my daughter with her learning delays. And I just did that to someone else, you know, and I felt terrible. And I honestly, I don't know if I could have lived with myself. I had a lot of suicidal thoughts there, you know, that if this little girl dies, I don't want to live, you know, I don't deserve to live. And I ended up going to a rehab. And it was while I was in the rehab, I found out she finally woke up. And thank God she was progressing and getting better day by day. I can't get away from the fact that my addiction not only affected this little girl, but affected her family. You know, the mom, what the mom had to go through. And then on top of that, what I put my own kids through. My kids had to go to school and answer all these questions about their dad. Hey, man, what's up with your dad, man? Like, what is he doing? He's
the hostages we take, brother.
Right?
God.
And it killed me. And I didn't know how to handle that. And, you know, I stayed in this rehab for 90 some days. It took all 90 some days to really work on that and try to get past all that. And thank God I had great people there working with me. And thank God this little girl did get better. Everything kind of somewhat worked out. At the end of the day, I mean, my addiction doesn't just affect me. It affects everybody around me. And unfortunately, in this situation, it affected people that were completely innocent bystanders. You know,
right.
I carry that with me. You know, I carry that with me every day. And there's nothing I can do for that little girl. There's nothing I can do for that family to take that pain away. All I can do is do the next right thing. And so they charged me. I flew back from rehab and they charged me with this DUI causing serious injury or death. And again, here I am looking at 7 years in a state penitentiary.
We're gonna have to add a second phase to this because I want to hear about the 7 years. So we're gonna have to do this again because we're running low on time.
Yeah, sorry, I got long-winded there.
No,
man.
I love it. No, God, it's so good. But I think that this next phase of what you have to go walk through is so awesome. I know it's not awesome, but you know, God does things for us when we can't do for ourselves. I really want to dig into that next time we talk because you're one of our board of directors for AARA. One of the first things, you know, it's kind of like recovery. You want to surround yourself with great people. You being on our board, we're definitely gonna have a second phase of this because I want to spend just as much time because I want to hear the day-to-day of, you know, that time you had to serve and how you did it and how you stayed sober.
Absolutely.
Because that is a miracle and the miracles are everywhere. And thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Coach, let me say before we wrap up part one of rightly so a 2-part episode. Hey, our first 2-part episode. So that's
right.
wonderful. The power and the authenticity of your transparency. I think our disease, and all three of us are men that have been through a hell in public. For whatever reason, our higher power spared us and we're alive, and none of us can undo some of the things that we've done, but we can all do tomorrow. And I just want to thank you for, I mean, what you've been through is powerfully unique to you and your family, but it's also no different than so many other families across this country. Yours may have played out publicly, but you know, I don't know if that's any better or worse than people's that have played out privately. One of the things that Coach says, which I know he'll probably talk about in part 2, that nobody brought his wife a casserole. And I think that's such a powerful metaphor for our disease. And so I just want to thank you for sharing. I was riveted. I know others will be blessed by the totality of your story. And certainly thank you. Just thank you for being transparent about part 1. I think we all know that we've made mistakes in our lives, but you are doing the next right thing, and you are giving back, and you have blessed our organization, and you blessed our family, our broader community across the country by your willingness to be engaged, to be transparent, and just thank you for your leadership.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. You guys are doing amazing things, and we're in this thing together.
Right.
It's trying to help everybody. Everybody's
That's right.
affected with it, and then, you know, it doesn't matter where you come from, what walk of life, but you know somebody in your life that is either affected by it or you're affected by it personally. So I appreciate it.
Well, listen, there'll be a part 2. Recovery is real. I'm talking to 2 coaches, which
right.
is amazing for me. I'm talking to one guy who's won a bunch of national championships and one guy's won a bunch of Super Bowls, and I'm watched all of them on TV, I think. And guys, sports does play a large part, and there are a lot of fans out there, and you guys have the power to help so many people. And thank you both for doing it. Recovery is real. Brett, you're showing us it's real in Kansas and Missouri and Chiefs Kingdom, and Coach, you're showing it across the SEC from LSU to Alabama to Georgia. And
That's right.
We'll be back on part 2 because recovery is real.
It's time to end the whisper. So many suffer in silence. I might not save them all, no, but I'ma die trying. It's time to end the whisper. Never thought in my life it would happen to me, but it did. And now I'm the voice for